All right, hey people, today is May 24th, 2024. I'm Chris Lucas. This is my show, The Protestant View. Today I got some very special guests, Stephen Henry and his brother Paul Henry today. Um, Last time we talked a little bit about the Vatican and all, um, and his brother's brand new to me,
Yeah,
and it's a surprise to me, so that's awesome.
nice to meet
So
you.
anyway, I'm looking forward to hearing what Steve has to say, and this time I plan on letting him talk a lot more. So,
Yeah,
and
cool.
whenever you want me to bring a screen up, go ahead and let me know, and I'll bring a screen up or anything.
You got it. Yeah, we'll
All
be
right.
planning to do some of that. So today we had a surprise. We were planning to talk about the Chicago fire and some of the history behind that, and I was trying to make sure that it was listed on our website. By the way, we have two websites: incpu.org, International News and Christian Prayer Update, so incpu.org, and also restorenbi.com, which we both referenced. We've referenced both those last time, but our Chicago fire was on our Restore MBI site. We just posted it last year sometime, and I tried to find it, and we and found that the link wasn't working, and some of it actually deleted a link off the website. Not unheard of. Actually, we had that with the INCPU site before that. 10 years ago, they actually deleted. A CIA hired somebody to hack, and so I had to rebuild the whole site because they scrambled it. Um, and we've had other various different things, which we'll talk about a little later. But and so I had to then call our host, and then at the same time I get an email from the other site that's on a totally different hosting service, and the both of them were being harassed at the same time. It was there that we found out what Jade Helm was about. Are you familiar with Jade Helm?
I heard it. It's been a while since someone brought it up, so I don't remember the details.
No worries. So you'll notice that we talk about pretty much all things from a biblical perspective. And I noticed some of your commenters were wanting us bring the Bible. We're going to plan to bring more of the Bible this time because God's word is the only thing that helps everything make sense.
Yeah.
And so, like I'm studying and teaching Romans 5 right now. He's doing First Timothy study, a few things like that. So I don't know what you're saying. We haven't had a chance to talk about that, but so we take the Bible seriously and use it as our worldview filter. Um, so then let's go to. I'm going to show a screen here.
All right.
Um, I've just got to find that little spot where are we? Present.
If there's any
Uh,
audio, make sure you click the audio button too on your
yes,
share screen.
good point. In this case, there's no audio.
Okay.
I wanted to show this. Is it showing? Yes, it is. So show window. Share. Is it that? Share. There we are.
There we go.
So, all right. So then what you're seeing there is Jade Helm. It's military operations. Now, they pretend it's only existed since 2015, excuse me, when it hit the news so very much. There we go. And it was in 2015 listed as a joint military operation and planning session between, at that time, just 8 states. However, even that year, I believe it was 2013 or 2014 is no, I became aware somewhere there. But 2015 is when it really hit the news, and because it was being used in more places than just that. And at the time, our non-friend AJ was talking about how Walmart was
Alex
going
Jones,
to,
just to let
yeah,
people
Alex
know.
Jones, yes, he's a psyops agent, Mockingbird agent, Operation Mockingbird agent. But he was rightly telling us that the military was in direct working partnership and working with Walmarts and other places to use their big storage facilities for command centers. And that was, of course, alarming to some, but they didn't realize it was all 50 states because at the time they were just pretending it was just 8 states. But like I said, this has been going on since the 1980s. Every summer they do this military operation, and a couple of years ago, I've forgotten which year, they were doing house to house urban warfare. And that's even what they're building some facilities in Alabama for. If you've ever seen Hunger Games or clips of it, you see this digital facility. They're building that kind of war training. Point being, so each year has a theme. This year, we found out through personal experience and through other details that we're watching, this year is cyber attacks. Now, they call it cybersecurity. There's nothing secure about their antivirus programs or their cyber investigations or anything. They're trying to control. If you've heard of what's called a fire sale subject, that's when they pretend that they're being attacked by some unknown or anonymous digital entity that's shutting down things. That's actually, it's always an inside job. It's always controlled by the people who are running it at that time. We've personally been attacked by their Operation Dark Sky this year within the last 2 weeks. They attacked my van sensors in a way to actually make the engine burn up. And this morning they were attacking both of my websites. So that's just a few of the clues that we found out in real time that this year apparently is, I'm going to stop sharing, this year's theme is Operation Cyber Warfare or Fire Sale, whatever they call it. Which, do you know that they use college students for this? That's one of their main sources of agents. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, to be honest, I'm not, but it doesn't surprise me no matter what they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, college students, you do want to catch them while they're young. So
yes, they do. And in college students are young. In military, they recruit them, 16, 17?
Also, it's like a lot of kids are pretty ambitious. They want to make an impression really quick.
Right.
They want to try and impress their friends.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can hurry up and get yourself in a high position, and then once you get kind of, I don't know, you get comfortable in something like that, you don't want to leave it, and then you're more prone to compromise everything else. That's kind of how I see it.
So true. Yeah, we've seen that a lot. The reason this is really big is, are you familiar with the 5G problem?
Well, I've heard people talk about it. I mean, to me personally, I don't know what to really think of it all because I haven't really looked into it, and
Sure.
I don't know what you're really going to do about it. So, but you go ahead, man.
Yeah. Good question. So we'll cover what it is and what we can do about it because there's a couple different things. So first of all, in my research, we saw the death shots be overplayed for 3 to 4 years there. But that was really to push a lot of different things, including a passport system that was more controllable, and you had to meet some guidelines that didn't match the country's laws. They superseded them to set up an international system that would supersede individual countries. In our case, our constitution. Other places, their rule of law. So it's an international system. In 5G, they're doing the same thing in a different way. They don't need 5G. The 4G is quite fine. The upper scale of the wavelength is actually, there's plenty of reports that show that it's actually meant to radiate humans and reduce our lifespan. For example, there are reports that are a little harder to find now in Wuhan that remember where the supposed COVID broke out. If you do a little more research, you find out that Microsoft and others were installing 5G antennas on all the buildings there. And it seems that they turned it on max because when 5G is turned on, it turned up to max, the heavy amount of radiation blasts the electrons and spins the electrons on the oxygen molecules. So it can't attach to our hemoglobin.
Yeah, I remember some people trying to, that we're talking about that part of the 5G.
You remember that?
But like I said, I haven't done any of the research, so
no worries.
I don't know. Hey, just one little slight thing.
Go
I don't
for it.
want to use the word death with the word shots because I do worry about that. Since I'd rather say like Trump shots or something.
I can go with that.
Is that
Sure.
okay with you? Okay.
I might do New World Order shots or Bill Gates shots or something because I follow you. Um, we were among those helping people realize that forced vaccination is bioterrorism because they have no right to force us to take something that they haven't even tested. And so that was where the term was coined. But yes, I follow logic. That's great. Um, Point being, getting back to the Wuhan, when they turned up the 5G, young people with nothing in their lungs, meaning pneumonia, those types of things that come with the flu,
Right.
um, they dropped dead with no air in their lungs either because their body really literally couldn't breathe. They couldn't attach to the oxygen. So I bring that up because that's one example of what 5G can do. But then you also look at pictures where the reason they trimmed trees away from it is because the radiation coming off of those towers is so bad. You can see many examples where the tree is dead within 3 to 5 feet of that tower.
Okay, I never even looked for something like that. So that's interesting.
So I'm kind of mentioning that because that's one of the things that they use also to invisibly harass things, like when they shut down a vehicle by attacking its sensors, which you've probably heard some of those cases, people getting a little frustrated with the newer technology because they can do that. So that's something to be aware of. So switching to the more health aspect, this is actually the military has moved away from the modern warfare. You remember World War II? There were literally dogfights in the air and tank fights and trenches. Well, they've moved from there to the digital war. And then they can do false flags more easily with it because they can hide who's actually doing it and they can label it as somebody else. But what we can do is we can't, it's hard to keep up on it, and you have to be very careful not to jump on the latest train because the latest conspiracy train it needs to be vetted first and sifted through sometimes. But what we can always do, even if, especially we don't know what to do, we can pray. The reason I'm mentioning those is because this is a digital battlefield. It's an international battlefield, and so we're seeing a different kind of attack style. Because as you might remember, G.W. Bush called for martial law. If I remember correctly, G.H. and Clinton did too, but I don't remember those for sure. But then Obama did, then Trump did, and I believe Biden did too, but I can't remember that one for sure, where they discussed if they could get away with calling for martial law. So this is a bipartisan conspiracy, as it were, to try to, if they can, as your one of your banners is very clear in saying, shut down American liberties, because it's secretly a Catholic project that runs these intelligence agencies. We were trying to find some way that doesn't get caught or can't easily be traced to shut down what is not going their way.
All right.
Interesting thoughts. Anyway. So
like, I'm sorry, man. Like, for like some of this stuff, I don't know really what to say to it.
You're cool. No, it's worth being aware of. Oh, sorry. Let's get to nutrition things. So some of us here in Orlando are actually feeling the 5G when they turn it up. It actually gives us headaches, and you get that EMF radiation from the new digital cars and things like that. So the reason I mention it is because we're not just going through a hot summer; we're going through a 5G hot summer. The chemtrails spraying things that make the radiation hotter. We think they're actually spraying radiation because there's been reports of it. But also when they turn 5G, some of us get headaches. And easy way to help your system is if you're working outside, wash off your skin somewhat regularly because your body needs that. So if there is something in the air, you can wash off and help your body perspire. But then also do something that helps you with your brain. Fish oil, cream, like a half and half cream, milkshakes, if you can handle those. Some people can, some people can't. Greens, magnesium, B vitamins. Those are all things that help you. If you're having trouble with EMF, which I know some of our audience is, then those are things that you can help your body with. And then also pray for trouble on all these invisible schemers, because there's CIA headquarters and a few scalar weapons. It's a very old like 20-year-old technology, including owning the weather by 2025. There's a lot of different things they use in the sky and on cities that we feel, and it'll help us. So that kind of wraps up that subject. But the reason I was also mentioning is because I wanted to segue from there. Might be a little out of your zone, but of interest. This might be useful for you. Have you seen? That was the wrong site then. Have you heard of Really Graceful?
Yeah, I heard of her.
Okay.
She's okay.
Yeah,
That's
she
you
hits and
mean,
misses.
right? That girl. Okay.
Yeah, she hits and misses. But on some things, her and I disagree. We're still debating some topics. But when she reports on some of the things that affect our health, including what they did in Maui, starting those fires with that new military base on Maui, those are some things we're going to need to become aware of and watch and pray because I'm sure you hear it every year. They're talking about a famine and a country shutdown. I don't think panic about it, but watch and pray about it. Like when they're messing up the truck shipping lines. So
yeah, I think the main reason why I didn't like Really Graceful was I got this pet peeve, I guess, or whatever, when someone wants to keep harping on the Jews so much and harping on Israel, and they never mention the Vatican. It drives me insane, and I'm just like, click, I can't subscribe to you anymore.
Yeah,
but at least she talked to me. I mean, that's that's why it's like I don't have as much dislike for her as I do a lot of other people, because at least she talked to me, and some of these people want to act like you don't even exist, that push that narrative.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Well, of interest, her and I have been actually comparing notes for about 4 years. I don't know her that well, but we share notes. And yes, her and I are still in a debate. She's actually changed her view on the Jews. I've watched it, knowing that there are some evil Jews, and she's right. But the problem is the Jesuits have been pretending to be Jews, and my brother knows more about this history. Jesuits have been pretending to be Jews since the 1500s. What am I going blank? Now I'm referring to Paris, Edmund Paris's research, among others, that the Jesuits pretend to be Jews to replace the Jews and then blame the Jews for the crimes of Rome. And you really have to balance out. But then we have problems like Netanyahu, where he actually is trained by Henry Kissinger, who I don't believe is a Jew, and I certainly question the loyalties of Netanyahu for some very big crimes that he's doing, and in the partnerships with other known Jesuits. Yeah, so that's its own complicated subject. But where was I going with that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
You're fine. You're cool. No, but
you were bringing up Really Graceful, the weapon technology, and
yes, I find her research on those useful. She's one of the few that are actually getting out real facts, and I can name a few others, but I'm drawing blank on their names at the moment, who are actually getting out real-time info. That's the citizen journalism that we do need. But yes, you're absolutely right. We do need to balance. We need to pull away from, or we need to tone down, I should say, the blaming all Jews for actually crimes of Rome, because it's not the Jews. And many of the Jews are actually they're selfish. Many of the worldly ones are selfish, and I agree. And that's a problem.
In any culture.
As in any culture. But they're not attacking. There's a group that is attacking, and some of those top leaders of the Jews are actually bribed. They're being bribed and on the same team, the New World Order team.
Yeah, if you read, I don't know if you're familiar with James Aiken Wiley's book, The Papal Hierarchy.
No.
Okay, so in James Aiken Wiley's book, and there's like some page I can find it in a minute if someone wants, but he's talking about how, and this book was written in the early 1900s, like maybe around 1905 or something like that, or I'm not even sure if it might have been even earlier, but you know what? I think it was written in the late half of like the 1890s or something. But anyway, So he says he was describing how the Vatican uses various isms like communism and all these other
Yes.
isms, and so they work to control all these groups for their gain. So he points the finger towards them, and that's kind of how I see it working. And so I just thought I'd kind of just bring up that book in case anyone's curious, because he was calling this out since the late 1890s. So, but
Nice.
yeah. So
Nice.
I just like to
Then
put
you've been a
more of the
contemporary of
focus
me.
on the Vatican, because I believe if you took out if the Vatican was taken out of the world stage, I think you'd have a completely different world. I don't think you would see the same kind of control. I mean, sure, some player might just take every tactic that they were doing, but I don't think it would be as easy, because you wouldn't be doing it under a Christian facade. And I think that's what really is the problem, because you're doing it under this Christian facade. So many people think that sounds, Jesus sounds right, and then if you paint yourself with Jesus, now you can suddenly um I guess endear yourself to a lot more people, especially when you claim to be the what is it, like, you sit in the place of Christ on earth. All
Yes,
right.
the vicar of Christ, as it were.
And then you can
And
start
then
turning Bible prophecy to even make it look that way, yourself. Because now all of a sudden, you're that kingdom. Now that rock hit that foot of the statue, and now that kingdom is going to spread throughout the whole world, and the Vatican winds up being, part of that rock, and and that kingdom. Well, Christ is that rock, but now the Vatican is that kingdom that's spreading all over the world. They paint themselves like that, and I just
yes,
think
they
that
do.
adds to the deception.
Yes, absolutely so. I'm showing the book that you were just talking about. I don't
Oh
think I've
yeah,
ever
yeah,
heard of it.
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah,
So,
1878. That was even earlier than I thought.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
thought it was as late as 1900. I get it. Wow, that's cool, man.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm studying First Timothy, and we came across a good verse yesterday that I use in my arguments, proving that the Pope has no position of authority anywhere in the structure of the church, and it's that Jesus Christ is the blessed and only potentate. There can only be and King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There can only be one head of the church, and there is actually no seat of authority for a second Christ over as head of the church.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that whole the Pope becoming the Roman bishop becoming the head of church probably started after 70 AD is when that whole thing, probably that whole mindset even started to work, when they're trying. Okay, they don't have Jerusalem's destroyed. A lot of things in Jerusalem's destroyed, and those Jews are probably like still, because that's where you had your first Christian churches, was in Jerusalem, and now that's
Yes,
kind of destroyed. And yet the Roman Empire is still the head of Rome, but they're not looking. No Christians looking towards Jerusalem anymore, because that's kind of been destroyed. So I think that's when the vacuum of Rome, that this vacuum was created, and Rome kind of just really stepped into that vacuum. Plus, they had already banished all the Christians from Rome when they got rid of the Jews. Because when you got rid of the Jews back in those, like what Claudius did around 49 AD. So when he did that, you took away the Jewish Christian influence. Well, the Jewish influence, which was the Christians, and there was like no separation between the two.
correct. Yes,
And so when you take that away, now if you still what Christians you have there, they don't have those same people, because they've been banned. So I mean, I think those two things working hand in hand, being the capital of the Roman Empire, plus what Claudius did in 49 AD, then you have Jerusalem destroyed 20 years later, and I think that kind of led to this, just like the perfect storm to create this. So just
yes.
throw my 2 cents out there.
No, that's great.
Stephen and I were talking about a few days ago how that story developed over the next several hundred years to where Rome decided to figure out how to be the kingdom to replace Israel. And that's really, I think, at the root of a lot of the problems. Not Jews fighting Roman Catholics, but Rome trying to figure out how to steal the kingdom from Christ. And so somewhere after they exiled the Jews out of their land in 135 AD, they were then forcing the rabbis in, or persuading the rabbis in Alexandria to rewrite Judaism with a different calendar and this sort of a thing, and with the Mishnah and the a different set of traditions and like noble rabbis to look up to. And then when they couldn't rewrite Judaism sufficiently that way, and I believe this was Rome's influence in each of these cases, because Alexandria was, I believe, the largest library or second largest library at that time, which means anybody of influence was definitely cooperating with the empire of the time. So then they when that wasn't sufficient to rewrite Judaism, I believe Islam was actually meant to be a replacement of Judaism. It's like a new way of being a Jew. Of course, not necessarily controlled by the Jews. It wasn't, but it was meant to control the Jews. And then each successive problem after that, the plagues and the Inquisitions and the Crusades, and then certainly by the time the Zari, which seems to be a forgery, a false document, and then the Zohar and the what's Rabbi
Mantelman.
No,
not him.
Rabbi
Sorry.
In the 1500s or 1400s.
Oh,
No, I'm sorry, 1300s. Who's the guy that was not Nachmanides, Maimonides?
yes.
Maimonides, whatever. Their traditions were intended to rewrite Judaism completely and make it more nationalistic, especially the Khazari. You can see that very clearly in the Khazari, but with the intent of creating a false Judaism, a false recognition of a false system of Israel. False. Anyway, so that's what Stephen and I were talking about the other day, because there's just been so many systems like this. I believe the Freemasons are that. The knighthood systems became that. They weren't Jews, but they then any problem that Rome ends up having with a system that they create, they then blame it on the Jews, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting.
I was gonna say the one thing you said interesting was you talked about a lot of stuff like around 135, and it were about the Jews being banished from their land, and I just think that's like a real curious time, because it wasn't too much earlier before that Roman bishop Anicetus was getting into it with Polycarp about, Polycarp goes and I was actually learning directly from the disciples, and then the bishop Anicetus wanted Polycarp to observe the Roman Church's traditions, and then you see that you see that split starting to happen with all that other stuff you mentioned following afterwards. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, because I didn't even think about that one aspect of it.
Yeah, so by trying to control the Jews, then they thought they had solved that problem, as if that were a problem, but to Rome, who then decided they wanted to be the only empire, they saw the Jews, and the devil has always seen the Jews as a problem to what he wants to do. They then thought that they could rewrite themselves into a religious power also, and the only way to do that was to merge all the paganism and all of the new Christianity and act like they were the ones in charge of this whole thing. But it develops in steps, one step at a time. That doesn't all. Rome didn't become a spiritual power in the world very quickly. They had to figure out how to counterfeit what already was known from the New Testament, and then they had to figure out how to act like they were even the writers of it, but they weren't. But certainly the directors or the head of it.
See, I don't even think there was the first Roman bishop until about 606 AD. which
Okay.
would be oh gosh, Boniface, Pope Boniface the Third. I would say he's actually the first Roman bishop because, and what's curious about that is right before he became the universal bishop, I should say, right before he became the first
Yes.
universal
Yes.
bishop, about 2 years before that, it was Bishop Gregory who said the first man who accepts the title of universal bishop will be the precursor to the Antichrist.
Yeah,
So,
well,
and then you
that
have
didn't
2 years
happen.
later, here's Pope Boniface. I'll take that title.
Well, and it's actually Gregory was actually responding to another bishop of his time. I forget the name of the guy that was trying to sort of coin that term or wanted somebody to take that title. So it was already an issue when Gregory was pope.
Yeah,
Or
because they
bishop.
were kind of fighting back and forth, like if there was a if there was a
Hmm.
universal bishop, and if so,
Yes.
who
There were
should
multiple
be
popes.
it? And so this happened. Like a lot of people don't know, this happened over like centuries, and then
Yes.
that was kind of like I think 606 to me looked like the culmination of it, because then it looked like they started having that one set figure that they recognized, and then
Yes.
Yeah,
then you
but
have
even
like
after
800 AD is basically the Holy Roman Empire gets started. So
but even somewhere around that time there was the pentarchy of Alexandria, Constantinople, Jerusalem, uh, Pergamum, or anyway, Smyrna, somewhere over in and then Rome, of course. But anyway, I don't remember what time frame, but there was already a pentarchy of 5 popes at some point there.
Now, you know what's funny? Paul and I had plenty of conversations about this. You know that there's what 5 or 6 main branches of orthodoxy, as they pretend. Um, if you analyze them, when Paul and I have been analyzing notes over time, this is a 10, 20-year conversation. We can find a little piece and go, oh, okay, so we look at it again. So it appears that. Oh, well, let me back up first. Let's cover Daniel, and then we'll get back to this because I think it'll a segue here. So you remember Daniel 3? You remember Nebuchadnezzar and his right after Daniel 2, when Nebuchadnezzar had this dream and he was demanding all of his soothsayers tell him what the dream was, and they'd also interpret it.
He was just
yeah,
Yes. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I missed that. Then the 4 kingdoms, which is what you were referring to, and oh, that's what I'm going to catch it. Then Daniel 9 actually has more of that. If you referenced it, I missed it. My apologies. But
no, he just referenced the vision of
the vision.
empires.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So then, yes. So then, there's been 7 kingdoms of Satan. There was the Nimrod one. Then there's the Chaldean or Babylonian. I think that one's combined. Then you had no, that's not quite whatever. I lost track. Egypt. Yeah, that's the one I'm missing.
The Assyrian, the Medo-Persian,
And then of course
Greek
and Roman, and then the revived Roman Empire. The 10 toes, and that's another part we're seeing these Bilderbergs and other meetings. Sorry, the table's wobbling a little. These Bilderberg meetings and those kind of things are trying to set up 10 toes. That's why we have the European Union. That's why we have the Asia Union being discussed. We have the Middle East Union being discussed. If you've noticed in the news in the last 3 months, we've also been talking about the African Union. Several years ago, they were talking about the North American Union. So Satan is actively trying to form those 10 toes. But the problem for him is that we're in that little gap that isn't mentioned in Scripture much, called what we call the Church Age. It's known as the Church Age. When his symbol's X. I didn't actually know that. Okay, that would explain why they liked Xmas and funny. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, Twitter is now called X, so that's unusual. So these 4 empires. Now, if you notice, who was ruling the known world when Jesus was here?
Oh yeah, the Roman Empire. of
Roman Empire,
course.
yeah, exactly. It was an easy question. Sorry. And so, who have we been fighting with in many ways since then? It's just the Roman Empire has taken different forms. When the Roman Empire became so um, gross and perverse that nobody could support it, it collapsed. But the financiers behind it were like, well, we still have money to spend in somewhere, so we got to do something. So they repackaged themselves over time, uh, somewhat 300s, but then obviously, like you're pointing out, the official announcement and promotion of 800-ish on the Holy Roman Empire. And then that lasted, including the Inquisitions and Crusades, to end of 1400s, 1500s, depending on. But the reason I'm mentioning this because here's the 10 toes. So Rome's still trying to rule, and now segueing back into what you were talking about with the orthodoxies. It seems to us that Satan using Rome to control the Jews has always been, and obviously the Christians being grafted in, always been one of their main frustrations. So when they can't win in an area, they will fragment it and pretend that that group has nothing to do with Rome anymore. And now that's a new Catholic cult to control that section. Have you thought about that?
Are you saying the Orthodoxy is, or?
The different
Well,
branches of Orthodoxy.
yeah, the Orthodox Church is. I really don't know much about them until recently, and I really thought I was really actually surprised that they defended the Catholic Church so much. At least the YouTubers I see, they defend them because I was recently thought I was friends with well, not friends, but I mean I thought we were on good terms with each other. Then one day he just lets all like, and he had like no subscribers hardly, and I was helping him promote his channel because I was like, well, this guy's reading the early fathers' works, and he seems like a decent guy, and it's like, so I'm gonna help him promote his channel. Next thing I know, he gets all these like Catholics to join. Next thing I know, I'm being banned from his channel by all these Catholics, and I'm like, dude, what's going on here? And it's like, well, their church is ancient, and my church is ancient, and you got weird views, and I'm like, uh, and it's like, no free speech, obviously, Roman Catholics. I mean, that's just been my encounters. Like, it's like the Sam Shamoon types, right? I don't know if you're familiar with him. It's like, yeah, guy might be brilliant on the Trinity or something, but man, it's like, I really hate the attitude of like, you're a heretic and quick to ban you, and the anger, and I'm like, okay, you guys are okay being buddy with the Catholic Church after what the Eustacia did to you. That's what blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you guys were like, that was probably more brutal than what the Nazis did to the Jews. And yet, but what the Nazis are doing to the Orthodox, the Eustacia was ran by Catholics. And the Pope even rewarded Anti-Pavlok for what he was doing there. And then it's so my mind is being blown because it's like, how is it that you are so defensive of the Catholic Church when this was World War II and they have just done this to you? I mean, just the most gruesome tortures, not just to men, but I mean, we're talking about men, women, civilians, children, babies. I mean, like, they used to throw infants up in the air and catch them on their bayonets, but that was like not even that bad compared to the other stuff they were doing. The other stuff they were doing was way worse, and you just like, I mean, it was really satanic looking to me, and I mean, and they used to do forced Catholic conversions.
Yes.
I'm just like, to make sure, and they would kill you right after you converted to Catholicism. A lot of times they would kill you as soon as you converted to Catholicism because they wanted to make sure you didn't convert back. And I'm just like, and so my mind was kind of blown when I saw this happening, because I really thought Orthodox were more aware of it, because the couple of Orthodox I had dealt with, they were actually the only people that were speaking out against COVID and everything going on in 2020, and they were bringing up everything and all this, and their channels were getting banned, and these were actual like church channels, like official church channels on YouTube, and they're getting banned. And I'm like, okay, so the Catholic Church is not letting you talk, doing all this other stuff. You could see, your Orthodox church channels being just taken off the internet and for speaking out against what's going on. But yet, you know, like you got these groups like Sam Shamoon, for instance, and this other guy, like they'll all defend the Catholic Church and they'll claim that they're Eastern Orthodox or something like that, or
Yeah.
like Asian Orthodox. I can't remember which one, or Syrian Orthodox, something to
Serbian.
that effect.
Serbian.
Well, yeah, there's also the Serbians too. Those were the ones that really got it in
Yeah.
Kosovo. Yeah, or
Yeah.
not Kosovo, but Yugoslavia. Yeah.
Yes. Right.
But
Yeah.
I was just going to say the Jews, of course, have suffered every single one of those things that you've described about the massacre of the Serbians, Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, or whoever they were.
There's even a Holocaust before the Holocaust everyone knows about. It was Poland. No, I'm drawing blank on. You can find a book on it, very well detailed history, and my brain's going blank on the name of that book at the moment. The Holocaust before the Holocaust. That's
yeah, I don't know the name of it.
Anyway, yeah, but yeah, yes, there's interesting history, hard to take apart. But the Bolsheviks that were pretend to be Jews taking over were seemingly Catholic agents who were actually murdering the Jews as they were trying to flee, as the Vatican was changing how Russia was run.
Yes. Yeah. See, I think that was all set up by the that's all ties into the Protocols of Zion too.
Yeah.
Because the Protocols of Zion, I mean, I think when that document was created, that was to make it look as though like there was this real Jewish group that was gonna take over Russia and then push communism onto the entire world.
Yeah.
And I mean, man, when you read that Protocols of Zion, I don't see how anyone with any kind of discernment, critical thinking can read that and go, "Oh, a Jew wrote it." When it's got so much just like almost basically praising the Vatican as being like, "Oh, they're the only enemy that can stand in between us." All right, and after the stuff they do to the people of the world and the things they endorse, it's like, especially after 2020, when you see the Pope having the Vatican Council for Culture talking about how he's going to ban free speech. Well, he has Chelsea Clinton there, and they ask her, "Hey, what do you think are some things we should do?" And she goes, "Well, one thing we should do is like control the media more and go after these people that talk about medical misinformation." And you can hear all of them clapping. Yeah, when she's talking about banning free speech more or put more restrictions on it.
Yes.
And so the Pope's behind all this stuff, and it's like I mean, Bill Gates, he just built something like almost right in the Vatican recently. I can't remember if it's a hotel or was it a restaurant or something. I mean, it was
a resort.
I can't think of what, but it's like, and then his wife, Melania, or not Melania,
Melinda.
What's her? Melinda? That's her name? Yeah, Melinda. I get Melania.
Understood. They're both Jesuits.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can hear her at this like TED talk, and she's talking about like her Jesuit influence growing up and all this other stuff. And so here you got, and she's married to Bill Gates, and here's Bill Gates doing this stuff throughout the whole entire world. And I'm like, it doesn't really look like the Vatican's the one holding it back, unless you think this is a good agenda going on. Then that, if you look at the Protocols of Zion and you look at what the Pope's doing, how can that have any legitimacy to it? If you also think the Jews are behind it, but yet the Vatican's promoting it too, but the Vatican is supposed to be the Jews' moral enemy, right?
Yeah,
like that doesn't make any sense. It's like, how does this not jive? It's just like I was telling you the last time, when they leave the southern border open and Trump's like, "Oh, Democrats are anti-Catholic." No, if they were anti-Catholic, that border wall would be super high by now. No, they want that border wall left down because they're pro-Catholic, because those immigrants go and vote. They're encouraged by the Catholic Church to support the Democrat Party, and when they come in here, then the Democrat Party grows, because that's why California became Democrat after Ronald Reagan passed amnesty.
Well, of interest, an interesting opinion. is that I actually think that the secret Catholics who can't hide in the openly Catholic among the openly Catholic Democrats is the secret ones have to hide in the Republicans. For instance, the Rockefellers who pretend that they're not Catholic, but have been funded by the Catholic cult to do lots of things worldwide, including their oil empire and everything else they're doing, and their pharmaceutical things. They pretend to be Baptist. Well, clearly, Baptist and conservative mean nothing to them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little distracted, man.
No, bro. So, but
Because I saw that Linda.
Yeah, I know. Right? Huh?
I could. I'm sorry, man. I didn't
That's confusing.
Face what you were saying.
No worries. But so the Rockefellers have been direct partners with the Vatican cult for a long time, and that's who built them up. They were also the ones that Rome used to rebuild the Arab caliphates into the Arab zones, Arab sort of peoples into actual countries that then they can manipulate and try to create what they're hoping to be a Middle East union. But then God inserted, nice. God inserted Israel back in, according to prophecy, with angels alongside the planes and tanks. We've met 2 Jews who don't believe in Jesus, but who saw angels in the 1948 and 1967 wars. So God clearly was fulfilling prophecy in 1948, 1967, restoring Israel to their land. God started Israel in 1300 BC and restarted it in 1948, 1967. So that was, but the problem for the Rome and the Rockefellers is that Israel is right in the middle of the Arab League. Everybody else is in agreement other than Israel because it's Israel's survival.
I guess I got a different take on that because I think the Vatican is the one who helped create the state of Israel. I don't know if it was really God's plan to do it, because I think it flows perfectly with the protocols of Zion, because now you can have all these reasons why the United States can now poke their nose in it, and then the Vatican can basically use the United States to poke its nose in the Middle East and then take more control, because now it's like, oh, well, you're attacking the Jews, and oh, those who bless Israel are blessed back, and so let's go fight over there, and here's this trouble starting up here with these Arabs, but what if the CIA went in there and created this trouble and maybe propped up this little so-called Arab terrorist organization and funded them, and then now they go and attack Israel, now we go in there. See, I think there might be something more like that. I don't buy into this whole, I'm not sure how organic Israel being formed actually is, or how much that is of God's plan, because I believe Daniel 9 was fulfilled by Jesus, and it seems like everyone else who thinks Israel's like part of this end times, they think that Daniel's 70th week is about a future Antichrist, which is a complete Jesuit conspiracy, in my opinion.
No, Revelation
you
talks
can push
a
back
lot
on that if you want, if you got a different belief, but I'm just
totally. Revelation explains what Daniel briefly referenced. God doesn't give any of his prophets all of the picture, but he makes sure that none of his prophets contradict themselves. So when it's in Scripture, it'll make sense in all of Scripture. In Revelation, from Revelation 6 to chapter 19, God's describing the 7-year tribulation that God told Daniel long before the Messiah would come. That's why he couldn't tell the difference between the coming of the Christ to die first and the coming of his kingdom part 2. So I totally agree with you. There's a lot of Jesuit confusion mixed into what we understand as Christianity. But if you just stick with the Bible, you can parse some of that right back out, and you can find how even when sometimes when Satan loses, he then pretends he's the one who invented the idea to then blur it a different way.
So I'll explain this a different way. First of all, the Jews were already looking for a place to settle because they were being so badly treated by the Hill of Settlement situation and the constant stirring of blood libel and different just false accusations. But the The tribulation, you can understand it a different way, because before the Christ comes, there will be a great falling away that comes first, and we know that that's going to be a lot of fake Christians who then fall away from Christ, right? And because they were never believers in Christ, they wanted to rewrite Christianity, and so. But the devil is a liar and the father of lies, the worst kind of lies you can think of. So the counterfeits of Judaism, for example, or any kind of way to replace Israel and God's prophecies to restore Israel and establish a kingdom in their land. So it's just logical that the devil is going to try to create his own replacement for God's kingdom. And eventually Rome is going to have to admit that the only way to do that is to have a false Christ act as Christ, pretending to do miracles and pretending to be God in the temple. That's the only way to get the world to actually try to follow Satan on that level, is to have a replacement, an imitation false Christ. But Christ actually set this example in right from the beginning. When he did creation, he intentionally set a pattern of 6 days, and then the seventh is a time of rest. And all through the prophets, you can see that it's prophesied that there would be a time of rest. And David clarified that time of rest wasn't yet. Was it David?
Yeah, even David.
The promise that there would still be a future rest.
Zechariah talks a lot about that.
Hebrews clarifies that time of rest is still coming. So humans have been given 6,000 years to prove what happens when the bullies and the crooked people that use force are allowed to run things in governments. And then Christ is going to have 1,000 years to reign over the earth, a time of rest, an actual time of rest on the earth for Israel and for the world, to prove what happens when godly and righteous people are put in authority of things. So this is a principle God established right from the beginning.
Yeah, see, I have no problem with that part right there. You know, because I mean, now obviously people who've been watching my show knows my views do develop pretty quick and change pretty quick. But so far, I don't have much with that last part. You said I definitely don't have a problem with it. That's kind of my current understanding of things. That's cool. I think there's going to be a demonstration of what that's like when God runs things, but I'm still kind of like, is that really like the end of the world when that's happened? You know,
well,
or is it like a millennial reign? That's where my mind goes with it.
We're basically in the care of God at that point.
Yes.
Yeah. So God will. There will be one more uprising at the end of Revelation 20. There'll be one more uprising of enemies against God worldwide, and God isn't confused by, oh, they're pro-Israel, or they look like a Christian, or they're godly people. They've been married forever and they're really nice. And God's not confused by all that. He can see the heart of people, so he knows that that's going to happen. So you see the great falling away again at the end of the millennium that turns into a army that no one can number coming up against Jerusalem and the saints to kill them. And so that same principle happens right before the millennium as well. The devil is just at a peak of his strategies, mass murdering. And I was going to comment from Revelation 17. One of the things that people need to be aware of is that, is it 17 or 18? 17. No, 18. 18 verse 24, Revelation 18:24. And in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and of all who are slain on the earth. That's a time that's still coming. The devil is still putting together his worst strategies against Israel to
well noted, by the way. The comments on target. Yeah,
Yeah,
Kissinger.
I just play the comments because I don't want people to feel like I'm ignoring them. So
No. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is real time conversations, and yes, that person Kissinger was no friend. He never was. He had to play a role.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So let's cover. So I just saw you talked about the U.S. liberty. I'm so glad you did, because here's Jesus talked about the wheat and the tares that grow together, and you have to parse them back out. God knows who are His, and if you study from Genesis 12 throughout Scripture, you find that God always has two categories, and Israel is His time clock for this 6,000 years, when He promises 36 times in 36 passages that He's going to restore the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to their lands because of His covenant with eternal and everlasting covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, including everlasting covenant with the land. I'm referring to both Genesis 12, 15, and 17 there, and that He's going to fulfill that. But the problem is Satan also wants a part of it. And so because Israel won't seek Him as they should right now, He allows some confusion. So that's where you have to parse out who is a Jew and who is not, as God through Paul talks about in Romans quite a few times, especially 9 through 11. Somebody has an interesting yes.
Kissinger's
yeah,
Kissinger-
Henry Kissinger is appointed
One
Georgetown
famous one.
University Center for Strategic and International Studies. He taught at Georgetown's Edmund Walsh School of Foreign Service for several
Right.
years in the late 1970s.
That's
I think
yeah,
that was a very
thank you.
important comment.
That's who trained Bibi Netanyahu.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I don't trust him at all.
But also Netanyahu's dad wrote
Yes.
I read his book. It's like 1,100 something pages on the history of the Inquisitions, and it actually basically is saying that Rome was never at fault. It's almost sort of our fault as Jews because we were too nationalistic or too collected to ourselves and sort of created a other against each nation we lived in. It's pretty corrupt stuff. But what were you talking about before that?
Which one? U.S. Liberty, Kissinger.
No, right before Kissinger.
USS Liberty.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Who knows? Anyway, now this is where it gets fun, because history is exciting when it actually makes sense. When you're missing pieces, it doesn't make sense. And when you have the false leaders promoted, it doesn't make sense. Jack Chick was the first one I saw, and he was working with Alberto Rivera at the time, to note that the CIA has been controlled by the Catholics since it was started. Well, that's not hard to figure out, because G.H. Bush, Skull and Bones, Yale. Of course, there's Harvard, Scroll and Key. Both of those work directly with the Vatican to promote their projects, and I hope to go through a few of the prominent names of the Jesuits in a second. But Kissinger trained Benjamin Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was trying to mass murder all the Jews again with forced death shots, which is bioterrorism. He was also caught with banking crimes that he's bribed his way out of so far. And just about the time he's about to be prosecuted or another protest or another lawsuit, I can't remember which, he started this illegal war, again, war on terrorism kind of thing, with this Hamas entity that was trained by CIA and has been promoted by the FBI, but is also working with Mossad. And there was an original, Mossad gets blamed for it, but there's a secret one that I can't remember the name. Shin Bet, who actually does the crimes and then blames it on all Mossad. But Mossad has, I don't trust any of the intelligence agencies, but there are ones who are actually more devious crimes that don't come to light. But Shin Bet is one of those. So G.H. Bush started the CIA, and they are the ones who train these Arab terrorists. They have Arab camps, and when they get caught, then they have to go, oh, no, we didn't know, and they have to move it somewhere else and things like that, as you know. But so the USS Liberty is an interesting subject, because at the time, I don't remember who was in office. My brain's going blank at the moment. That was a partnership of the evil Israel ruler and the evil U.S. rulers, but it wasn't an agreement with the people of Israel or the U.S. And when they got caught, they then had to blame it on a few people and try to scrub it. Or even actually they've done for many years, hidden it so most of you don't even know about it. But it's those kinds of things when they do terror and they try to, it's like it was Protocols of Zion. Rome tries to do crimes by proxy, false flag, and then try to get the Jews blamed for what the secret agents of Rome or one of her intelligence agencies does. Any thoughts on that?
Oh God, yeah, dude, I am really sorry. I had to do something behind the
Okay.
scenes with my
Oh, good,
set.
good, cool. No problem. So, did you follow the train of thought though? The
Barely.
Rome uses the intelligence agencies
Yeah.
to do things, but in a way that tries to blame the Jews and the actual Christians for the crime.
Well,
It's
right, because you have a lot of that going on with what Operation Gladio and such, and that's like another way they do this, man. It's just start up trouble with different groups and
yes,
blame other groups.
we're gonna need to look that one up. Didn't know about that one.
One thing when you mentioned that though, it made me think of like the massacre of Libsyn,
That
where
one sounds familiar.
what it was I guess these like this Roman uh, cardinal was accusing the Jews of trying to infiltrate the church. But what were they doing before then? They were being brutal with them if they were Jews. So obviously it makes you join it to escape the brutality. But then they turn around and accuse them of trying to infiltrate their church and trying to like any kind of corruption that might be going on, they'll just aim it back at them and be like, well, they were trying to infiltrate it. It's their fault. Like a bishop would be caught doing something. Oh, it must be them. They did it. And then they go massacre them. I can't quite remember what triggered the massacre. It's just when you were talking about, blaming Jews for other things. I just remember the massacre of Libsyn.
Yeah,
and it's never talked about.
Yes, true.
Benjamin Netanyahu's book covers a lot of those kind of things in Spanish history, but they also like any higher rate of taxes because the country's going to war, or it's just all kinds of largely economic situations. And then yes, also especially like every Passover is one of these kind of situations where churches
and Ramadan
preach against the Jews as the worst evil in the world, kind of a thing. So it depended. Sometimes it's propaganda, sometimes it was politics of the state, sometimes it was a war situation. But yeah, generally Rome likes to blame the Jews for its problems.
Have you looked at World War I, World War II? We talked about this last time. The treaties tell the war. If you look at this actually didn't come out in the treaty in this state, but if you look more critically at what was the point of the war, what was the result of the war, it's kind of the follow the money kind of thing. You can tell in the First World War they had moved all the Jews out of positions of leadership in USS Liberty. Yes,
that's Media Bear.
Yes, that the crime.
Just now sent me that. Hey man, by the way, I made you a mod again. I don't know what happened to your wrench. I didn't take it away, but
the what?
I'm talking to Media Bear. I gave him a wrench again because it's like I don't know what happened to it. He's probably like, "What the heck?"
No worries. No, yeah. Sorry about that. There are
sorry about the distraction, man.
No worries. No. There are things. There are things that happen to our websites, and some of it is micro sabotage. That's almost hard to catch. It's ghosting kind of thing. So it'll work out. So getting back to thank you, Johnson. Yes, appreciate that. Yes, he did. Yes, McCain. Oh, sorry. The comment, brilliant comment here. It reads, Johnson was president during the USS Liberty attack, and McCain, Admiral father, helped cover up. Yes, it did. That's a true statement. It's one of those crimes still needs to be investigated. Great. We're enjoying it too. So back to World War I kicked the Jews out of prominent positions, including financial, because that's where when God put a blessing on the people, they have a bit more of ability to do certain things and be good with money and control money was part of that. But Rome also fights for that ability too. So that's included. But so they kicked him out of positions in leadership in the first war. In the second war, they actually tried to mass murder them. That was a satanic plot who inspired the Catholic cult, who hired Jesuits like Nazi Hitler and his top 5, 6, 7, as well as the whole Catholic networks of Europe to try to kill all the Jews. And when that didn't work, God kept stirring up Christians to support the real Jews and get them to be restored to their homeland. Even the Vatican had to sign on to Vatican agents had to sign on to the document and agree, yes, we need to do. And so then they tried to mass murder the Jews in 1948, but God defended them with angels. They tried to then again murder them in 1967 with the 6-Day War. But God protected with angels. And then they got their capital, Jerusalem, which I believe is the actual one that fulfilled the 400-something year prophecy. And it's a little hard to parse out, so I can't be very specific on that yet, but someday we hope to. But then you had the 1973 Yom Kippur War, where they were again outnumbered and they were sabotaged from inside. The attack was launched. They were delayed by Kissinger from getting the weapons they needed. But then they did still win, but then they lost in the treaties because the treaty went through 3 or 4 revisions and they actually lost the land they had won. That was part of Israel, the little slice of Israel that belonged to them. And the Vatican, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, who really are not the Rothschilds, of the Bauer family, German Catholic Bauer family.
But they intentionally did the war to distract from the fact that they were working on treaties that would do it just very subtly later on. So like they set the precedent in the Treaty of the Yom Kippur War, but then they worked out the details of what they wanted to take from the land of Israel further. But each step is this way. The Balfour Declaration and every step after is just an incremental reestablishing every problem they could put around Israel possible. Like as if the Philistines and the Syrians and all the enemies of Israel are all still right around them. It's a reconstruction. It's not accurate, but it's an intentional reconstruction by Rome, like you're pointing out, of the state of Israel, but with every single problem that could possibly be reinvented and restructured around Israel. For example, since those wars, then it was perfect for the propaganda of Rome to redesign the whole structure of this conversation and make it look like Israel is militant and like always planning terrorist activities and all these sort of things, as if they're like an equal rival to. So then this whole criminal court situation Stephen and I were just talking about with Israel.
Oh yes. So rather than let Netanyahu get, I'm catching the audience up. Yeah. Rather than let Netanyahu get prosecuted by his own people for his crimes in their country, they're
trying to then get Israel to push for to label Hamas as a terrorist organization
with the UN
war crimes in the international court, criminal court, and then really this is actually just a reverse tactic, so that you accuse them, but in reality then stack up the details and show that Israel's doing similar activities sometimes. It's a lot of it's fabricated, but you know how they do these things with the intelligence agencies, so that it looks like both of them are equal problems in the world. That's really one of the things that's going on here, is just a whole stacking of propaganda against Israel, so that the world hates Israel and thinks that Israel is like secretly funding or designing behind a lot of the wars of the world. And of course, the devil is looking forward to wars against Israel in the future. So he's trying to shape every piece in that direction. And unfortunately, has Christians involved even in helping build weapons that the devil is going to use to kill honorable people worldwide.
Now, as far as Israel goes, you don't think that government's good over there, right?
Oh, absolutely not. No,
okay, because I noticed people dropping off, and I want to make sure people understand, because I saw a few people like just drop out of watching the view, and as you're talking, and I think they're getting confused because they don't like. I'm not sitting here. Like I said, these guests are new to me. I'm just having a conversation. I don't even know what they believe, but as far as my view goes, it's like I definitely don't think that the government of Israel is good.
No,
what I'm basically trying to communicate, and what I think my guests are trying to communicate across too, is that we just don't think they're the ones masterminding everything.
That's correct.
Rome, right? And so we're not saying this government's good, but that Rome's masterminding it basically, and it's not really Jews themselves, but there are some that are
Right.
corrupt who are going right along with it, and then there are some that just they don't have the light in their eyes to know what's going on and know how they're being manipulated either. So some of them are
Correct.
just being flat out manipulated. Some of
Yes.
them might just be flat out evil and going along with it. And
Yes.
they may know what's going on, you know, and who's doing what. That's hard to say, you know.
Yes, true.
But yeah, I just want to be clear with my audience that we're
Thank you
not
very much.
trying to say, oh, the government of Israel is good and they're just being blamed for things, you know.
No.
It's like,
No, and that's where you have to parse it back out. Again, the wheat with the tares. You have to identify who is being honest and who is not, and who God recognizes as a Jew and who are not. I actually, this might be shocking to some, I question the Jewishness of Netanyahu. He was trained by Jesuit Kissinger. I don't trust him and others like him who hate the land of Israel, who hate the God of Israel
Right.
and the covenants of God with Israel. I don't trust them. I do trust a number of Jews I have met along the way who they have some fear of God and they try to treat people well. And when you talk to them about real facts, you get some logical conversation. Those are the kinds that I love. I enjoy them because they're
Well, it
trying to
doesn't
figure
change
out.
their nationality, though. If
No.
he's Jewish, he's Jewish.
Well, we don't know. That's I put that up in the air because I don't know. He acts like an enemy. I know that part. Enemy of the Jewish people. I've caught him betraying them many times. And I'm not Barry Chamish caught anyway. There's other Jews. The reason they have a couple 100,000 protesting outside of his home and the Knesset in Israel. No, actually, good question, Miss. That's actually the CIA that created them. The CIA.
that's what
created
I
them.
would say. I know a lot of people blame Israel, but I actually think the CIA created them
Yes.
in order to basically work the same way that someone who would think that Israel. Okay, so someone might think Israel created Hamas, and they might have a certain view of how all that's working. And I
Mhm.
think I would say we have a similar view of how that works, but we don't
Yeah.
think Israel created it. But the CIA
But they help
created
fund it.
Hamas, and probably through
Yes.
Operation Gladio, I would say.
Yeah. Sure.
They help fund it and support it.
Well, not they. You have
So-
to parse out Mossad from Israel.
Israeli government
Yes,
is
yes.
helping prop up a two-sided argument
Yes.
of
Now let's talk about
of
that.
the land.
Let's go for a top level discussion here. Your audience has probably noticed the two-party system always seems corrupt, but doesn't quite make sense. Why? If you understand when you're only given two sides, and one is opposition, one is empire and one is controlled opposition, it starts to make sense. They're both owned. They're both
It's
playing.
always a second pillar like that. Always.
It's actually a fabricate. It's the illusion of choice. In technocracy, there's a few different things that some citizen journalists call it, but oligarchy, key thing. So it's always shadows who have to present. Well, this choice looks better than that one, doesn't it? Oh no, they both do good and bad. Well, you can't ever have a perfect one, so you just have to pick the lesser of two evils. Which points out you're not supposed to pick either evil. You're supposed to form a new party, as it were, where no, the Bible says this, I'm going right down the middle. God says this, I can't do that or that. The reason I mention that is because that's the problem here too. You have they want it to be two sides, two equal options, like Paul was just saying, where you're picking one evil side or the other. No, you have to hold both accountable to God, who isn't left and right. He's 100% holy. He's the honest referee who can parse out all of it. No, this is right. This is wrong. You were right here. You were wrong there. You were right there. You were wrong there. And so we have to be very clear on who we give our support to and who we pray for, because some people, as you know, are so evil that they have actually sinned unto death because they actually have done crimes that people don't even know about. And you do not want to give your prayer support or blessing to someone who has sinned unto death. God's very clear in his word about that.
Ross White says, I guess I don't understand the point of your conversation. Basically, it's I don't. Well, if you want to go, you can go explain that.
All right. Yeah. So to understand a worldview, you have to put everything on the table. I'm a part to whole. I know there are a lot of other people who are part to whole, where if you have all the pieces together, the whole puzzle makes sense. And the more you can filter everything through God's view, in his wordings, very clear throughout his word. There are no contradictions. When rightly translated and in context, it all makes sense. It all becomes a very clear lens to filter things through. So when you take things that way, you turn gray into more black and white. Not that you can make it all black and white, but then you can understand the things around you and catch liars in real time, or in some cases, predators or war profiteers in real time. And then you can actually stop crimes and stop murders. And so what we're really discussing is multiple pieces of the puzzle so that we can all see more clearly.
The strategy of the propaganda of war. There's a whole lot of steps of vilifying a people and or shaping up sides of an argument before it turns into a war. So we're always watching details of criminal activities that's going on that can be caught, so that we're able to educate people what to watch out for. That's escalating, or that's starting to turn into a situation.
So just comparing notes on puzzle pieces.
Yeah, and I would just add to it, because when you say you don't know what the point of the conversation is, well, it's also just to kind of give people just kind of one point of the conversation is just to have a discussion with my guests and figure out what information they have, what information I have, and just see how it can relate to each other and figuring out the puzzle pieces. But then it's like the other thing is, I think we both share a similar goal of exposing how the Vatican's the one with a hand in most of what's going on in the world, controlling it from the top. And that's how all these things are able to be so well coordinated, because there's got to be one central entity running it. Something's got to be at the head of it. Yes. And, a lot of people, keep saying it's the Jews. And I mean, that's basically what you hear on most of the internet. It's the Jews' fault. The Jews did COVID. The Jews did this. But yet, my southern border's left open. That's 90% Catholic on the other side of that border. Yes. Why is that border left open? Oh, well, the Democrat Party hates Catholics. Wait a minute, Trump. If the Democrat Party hates Catholics, why can't you get the border bill? Yeah. I mean, you would think, okay, Trump wants the border wall. Democrats hate Catholics. Perfect marriage, man. You guys agree on something. Let's get that wall built. The wall's not getting built, and I don't know about you guys, but my area got more, got more colorful during Trump. I didn't get it so I grew up in a very white neighborhood now. I mean, I'm American Indian. I don't really feel like I have a race period just because I'm so mixed. Understood. But I'm just saying, it's like I sure didn't notice my area stay in the same demographic, during Trump. So there was some kind of immigration going on, and it changed drastically. I mean, thankfully, it looks like we got a lot of the good people, a lot of them are very, very good people, but nice. I mean, it's not that I didn't notice an inpouring of immigrants during his presidency. So, and I don't know how much poured through the border.
I'm sure. Have you seen this book?
Let me widen the screen a little bit. Oops. No, that's what I want to do. No, what's it say? Rabbi Marvin Antiman to eliminate the opiate. Volume 1.
This is interesting because on the back he talks about the Franks. He talks about Adam Weishaupt, Jesuit priest who founded the Illuminati in 1776, according to this guy, and how the Franks, the Masons, Illuminati, Jesuits working together. Though this rabbi never figured out the Jesuits. He did figure out the Jewish-born Karl Marx was an anti-Semite and wrote a world without Jews. He hated Jews. He was influenced directly by the Catholic cult. He noted how Judaism was labeled orthodox in order to destroy it. So he's talking about some old crimes and relabeling. So that was all I had to show. So he could, so that the Catholics could divide and conquer again.
Thank you for that comment, John 16:13.
Yeah, he says it was a Jesuit priest, Paolo Dal Oglio, who should be considered the founding father of ISIS, the originator of the Syrian war.
Right.
You raise an interesting point. I was more referring to, and I don't know that specific detail, so we'll have to look at that. Thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
But the reason I was mentioning is because by category, if you track the CIA's activities since World War II, you'll find them very often in the sabotage and supporting guerrilla warfare in countries that the Catholics wanted to overtake. It's the art of war, as they talk about. And there is a lot of guerrilla warfare that happened, and that's actually its own fascinating study. So we'll need to look more into that. I can't comment on that, but thank you. So let's cover one other big thing that I want to talk. Since we're talking about pieces of the puzzle here, let's go to the Chicago fire. Do you remember the Chicago fire? Not the 1958 one, but the 1871 one.
Let's see
The
here.
one that happened in 1871.
There's a
Oh, 1871 Chicago fire.
That's the one.
So the reason we're talking about this, Stephen's trying to point out that weaponry is being used for causing natural disasters, and this is one of the key things that Stephen and I like to look at a lot, because they like to Rome likes to commit crimes and figure out clever ways to blame it on it as an act of God or a natural disaster. So it's just a very clever tactic, and we're convinced that this is going to be used more and more and more. There's all sorts of weapons being created by military technology in America to commit crimes in very secret, tactical ways. But anyway, so we're wanting to explain this one because this one is old enough that you can get a lot of the facts on what really happened, and you can prove very clearly that it was not an act of God, even though that's what was said about it at the time. So, for example, there were two fires, two major focal points I want to put on this. The one is the Chicago fire of 1871, October 8th, that burned a third of Chicago, left 100,000 people homeless, and killed at least 300, but there's more than that were disappeared and missing, hundreds, and nobody knows exactly what happened. So, for example, the Christian community there, the preacher Dwight Moody, that we follow some of his life there in the 1800s, he said he never saw another one of the believers that were in the meeting that night in the church gathering. He never saw another one again, and it was a pretty large hall that they were meeting in. At the same time, same days that fire was raging in Chicago, in Wisconsin and Michigan, one of the U.S. most deadliest fires was happening that killed, I want to say, like 1,700 people and burned just hundreds of thousands of acres. And so both of these were made to look like an act of God. But in reality, if you look at the Peshtigo fire, the fire was started by railroad workers, and it had burned for 2 weeks, but not progressing. But suddenly accelerants were put into the woods that turned it into a mile-high, 5-mile-wide wall of flames that blazed through Peshtigo, the city of Peshtigo, in like 8 hours and killed several hundred people. I don't remember exactly. And I want to say 800 people died in that initial first fire right there through the city. This was the world's largest wood manufacturing plant, or wood, wood forest for processing and woodworking. So Peshtigo was the world's largest center of woodworking materials. And I think that's key because it happened the same day that the fire happened in Chicago, because both of these were part of the Northwestern conspiracy plot.
Have you heard that?
Which I'll talk about in a minute.
Do you remember that one?
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with any of this stuff you're bringing up. It sounds pretty interesting, but I'm not familiar with any of it.
So,
Civil War.
And the reason we know that it was a military operation is because the Americans and the Brits actually studied it our militaries studied the history of this Peshtigo fire during World War II, trying to figure out how to duplicate this against Germany.
That's not curious at all.
So whatever was done cleverly enough that it was made to look like an act of God. And of course, the Jesuit priest in the area there said that it was an act of God, and the mayor blamed it on as an act
They
of
didn't
God.
see nothing.
Well,
they
the
didn't know
Jesuit says that you gotta take his word, I guess.
nothing. Yeah, exactly.
So, but the Chicago fire is even more interesting because, like I said, it basically killed and or scattered the Christian community in Chicago. And the reason that matters is because I've got a quote of a Catholic priest saying in 1904, I think it was, or right about there, that people in the East don't understand the significance of Chicago in the West. That Chicago, within 20 years, is going to be the center of world power, and within 20 years, the United States will be ruling the world through democracy structures, and that when the U.S. is ruling the world, Rome will be ruling the world. And of course,
the U.S.
And of course, that's kind of cheeky because it's kind of ridiculous to suggest that that's how things will be structured when you can't see that. But I think he was actually telling, when they say tell a lie, tell a big lie. I think he was actually he did a reverse lie by saying such a bold statement. It sounded so proud and facetious that no one would possibly believe that. And yet in reality, that was the strategy, that they were hoping that from Chicago as the base, they would be able to control all of the various strategies of undermining governments and world economics. And of course, things changed. Instead, New York became a center of a lot of things and so on.
There we are.
He found the actual
Good
quote.
job.
There you go. Anyway, but yeah, so this Chicago fire, there was a guy that predicted the night of it the night before that this was going to happen in Chicago, and he was
Prophecy.
standing in Farwell Hall, which was Dwight Moody's YMCA hall, and he said, "This will be the last address that will be given within these walls. A major disaster is impending on Chicago, a calamity. I'm sorry. More I cannot say, more I dare not utter." And he got out of Chicago that night.
Do you think he was possibly responsible? I don't know. He sounds like it.
So that night was the I forget the exact the name of the plant, but the planing mill, Holmes planing mill fire that did not cross the Chicago fire to burn the Chicago Loop, but the next night, the next fire did.
The Chicago River.
Yeah, that didn't cross the Chicago River. I don't know what I said.
Mm-hmm.
So the next night, the fire started in the home of a Jesuit family in in their barn, and it didn't burn their home, and it didn't burn any of the homes of the Catholic Jesuits, or the school, or the church, or anything that was right there that was owned by the Catholics.
That's because they're protected by God.
But it did sweep right across two branches of the Chicago River to burn the ministry and friends of Dwight Moody, and just decimated the Sands, which was one of the other primary points, because the Sands was the sort of criminal element of Chicago at the time, and under the Willow District. And the fire was helped across those two branches of the river by a kerosene tanker that just happened to be there. And all these guys were the mayor, George Francis Train, that made that quote saying that there's a calamity about to happen. These guys were big with the Union Pacific Railroad system. The Train was the financier of the Pacific Railroad, and
coincidence, I'm sure.
Union Pacific Railroad. Anyway, Pacific Union Railroad. Anyway, and a whole bunch of other railroads. So they had the ability and access to do this. And like I said, the Peshtigo fire started with railroad workers there in Peshtigo. So if you follow all the steps, I've got a 140-page report that I worked on 3 years to put together on this subject.
He has his details.
And I put sources with every detail along the way. So you can see that it's actually a very serious crime. They had to put a lot of detail and a lot of effort into getting the kerosene tanker, truck, train cars there to help the fire cross the river. And then also the utilities, which were owned by Mayor Ogden and a variety of these people that were involved with the railroad system, so that this fire would destroy the center of crime in Chicago that happened to be right around where the oldest Catholic church was in Chicago. And the reason that's significant is because Rome was actually trying to make it Catholic, and they didn't care how they did it. So they were just paying Catholic workers to come from Boston to and all over the place to work on the bridges and building up Chicago, and with the shipping industry, it just brought a lot of criminal elements in. But they were the point is they were paying to bring these kind of people in, and to build up Chicago fast, and also trying to use the Irish sentiment against the Protestant English to create a hostility in Chicago that would keep the Protestants out. Another significant witness in this is the Catholic bishop himself, Bishop James Dugan. And he, 2 years before the fire happened, was trying to figure out who to communicate with and how to communicate that there was a major division of understanding among the Catholic leaders in Chicago about what should be done
about Moody,
about the Protestants in Chicago, and that he did not agree with the plan of the hierarchy of Rome.
So meaning he knew something, he heard it.
And so they found a way to trap him in a cathedral before he could talk to anyone. So then he's trying to yell, "Fire, fire, my cathedral's ablaze," in hopes that somebody outside would hear and understand that a crime was intended to be committed. And then they locked him away in an insane asylum. And
Catholics have done that many times over the centuries.
Basically, he wasn't able to get word out, and he also didn't quite have the details of it. He didn't quite know what was happening, but he understood enough to send a letter to thousands of Catholics and priests throughout Chicago and Illinois to try to alert them that there was a major division fight going on here. And even while they kept him in the insane asylum for the next 11 years, they left him as the official bishop of Chicago because it was just so caught that there was no way they could possibly remove this bishop that was honorable and respected by the Catholics in Chicago. So respected by the Catholics, and a friend to Dwight Moody, the Protestant evangelist that preached around England and British Isles and America, and is a well-known evangelist, and was a kind gentleman. Even after all these crimes were, and other similar crimes were committed against Dwight Moody's family, he still was a friend to Catholics. He never became hostile to Catholics. He gave, when his neighbors, when they in Northfield, Massachusetts, when they established a Catholic church, he gave a SD organ, which was the nicest musical instrument at the time for churches, and also gave a large donation to help build a Catholic church. So he was not like a bigot in any way. He was a respectable man. He really just wanted people to have access to the gospel of Jesus Christ and to hear or to be able to have freedom to understand the gospel, to understand the difference between Roman Catholicism and the gospel. And a lot of his ministry, it wasn't by his plan, but a lot of his ministry was in the Sands and under the Willow District, because he was a very poor man in Massachusetts from Puritan stock. And these were the poor that were like him, and he wanted to reach them. and especially when there was children who were suffering, and because he had a very difficult childhood, as very poor. His dad had died, and his mom was trying to raise 8 kids or 9 kids, and so he sympathized with families like that. And so his ministry was in the Roman Catholic district, but only because there were all these poor immigrants that Rome had brought in.
And wasn't taken care of. Rome wasn't taken care of. God stirred Moody to take care of.
So anyway, that I just wanted to introduce this. I don't know that there's a lot more to say on it, but people might find this interesting to look at because it's I believe well documented. I've done the best effort that I could to
Yeah, that's amazing research, man. I've never heard of that. I never heard anyone bring that up, and it's I mean, it's another little detail, man, that just because I think about the Catholic control of Chicago a lot, you know, with the gangs and all that, because it's like, you know, like because when you watch these movies, you know, it's like the heads of these mafias, it's always a Catholic Catholic run mafia, and then they work closely with the CIA. You know, that's
okay. You want a funny one on that?
Paul L. Williams.
Want a funny one on that?
Sure.
So the kid that I believe started the fire. Remember, I said the fire started in the barn of a Jesuit family. They actually lied about how old he was when the fire happened. They said he was 2 years old for years because they moved away from everybody for a long time because it was questionable what their involvement was. And so they spawned this myth of, oh, she must have been out milking the cow and the cow kicked the lantern. And that's what started the fire. But in reality, both this kid and his sister and one of the other eyewitnesses, that a Jewish fellow, Louis Cohn, that was their friend, were in the barn that night playing shooting dice, they called it, illegal gambling stuff, and drinking with the other neighborhood boys. And later on, all 3 of these witnesses admitted that that's really what caused it. Somebody in the barn, one of the boys in the barn. But that brother, that he kicked the lantern, or his older brother Pudgy kicked the lantern. He later on became a mob boss in Chicago and was running all of the whiskey operations during Prohibition, and the a lot of prostitution and a lot of the booking kind of, the gambling kind of operations and things. And to the point where he actually was involved in the hit with Big Jim Colosimo when he tried to get into whiskey running. And this hitman was Al Capone.
That one sounds familiar.
Ended up with Johnny Torrio, ended up becoming the next big crime organization in Chicago. So he was so big in crime, this kid, Big Jim O'Leary, that I'm convinced is the one that kicked the lantern and started the fire. That he could clean up his operations. He would get a heads up, and he would clean up his operations before the police would show up every single time. He always got a heads up. And
amazing.
His son married the chief of police's daughter. That's how
amazing.
That's how closely they're all working together there.
That's not an active
dad. Wow, man, all those details, man. That's some amazing research. I can't even really believe you guys just pull that off the top of your heads like that either, man. Like, I would have to be well prepared, before a show to even pull details like that out. That's amazing, man.
Well, thank you.
The fact that you even looked into it that much, and you also remember it, because I know
he had to review some, obviously.
I spent 3 years studying it, 1 and 2. I just looked it up.
You had to review it
within the last week to refresh my memory. So,
all right, wow. Well, and we just happened to get on the subject. Wow. Okay.
Yes, but we wanted to cover it because there's a few other details here, and I want to tie it together to help it actually make sense, because this isn't a standalone problem. You also had, nobody remembers, or very few people even recorded, that Moody's home, the Farwell home that burned down. Thank you, sir. I'm glad you enjoyed it. The
yeah.
Farwell Hall that burned in 1871 had also burned down in 1868 as a warning to Moody to stop and leave the city. This is a Catholic threat. Before that, in 1863, they burned Moody's home down.
And this is the year that he was threatened. I totally lost track of the detail.
1863.
The Northwestern Conspiracy plot was a plot in the Civil War. You're right. This is right in the middle of the Civil War. 1861 to 1865 is basically the time frame of the Civil War. This is right in the middle of the Civil War, and Moody was trying to minister the gospel among Southern prisoners who had been held in a prison, in a facility up in Illinois, and so there's a few thousand Confederate soldiers up there, and somehow he got wind of a threat that they were going to break out of the prison and burn multiple cities across the Northwest. So when that Peshtigo fire happened and the Chicago fire happened, it was just like automatically presumed among the Christians, because they had heard in 1863 that this was going to happen, that this was Confederates burning their city and burning cities across the Northwest.
But it wasn't Confederates.
And just to add fuel to that fear factor that they were trying to threaten Christians with in Chicago, they actually were using gunpowder and blowing up major important buildings in Chicago while the Chicago fire is going on.
Wow.
And blew up the entire Terrace Row, which was like the middle class housing neighborhoods. They literally blew it up with gunpowder just to absolutely terrify the Christians in Chicago while this was going on. But this was the Northwestern Conspiracy plot is what that was called.
So the reason I asked Paul to bring that piece in, because I wanted people to know that, because this is not a standalone subject. Whenever you look into fires that don't make sense and nobody know how they started, or the official story doesn't match, pull that cloak off and look for whatever pieces you can find, because there's usually conspiracy that the evidence was just burned.
Like Maui, for example. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So Todd Lincoln, one of the things that burned was
in Chicago.
Todd Lincoln's law offices in the Chicago fire there, and he had his dad's records of quite a history of crimes of Roman Catholicism that caused the Civil War.
Yes,
it was in Todd Lincoln's archives, and it was burned in the Chicago fire.
Wow.
The reason we know that is because who recorded it? Is it Chinnicky or
Chinnicky?
I want to say his lawyer was
50 years in the Church of Rome.
What's his first name?
Charles.
Charles Chinnicky was a man who was previously a Catholic Jesuit who turned, or Catholic priest anyway,
high level,
turned against the Catholics, and
Abraham Lincoln was his lawyer. Because you mentioned the lawyer part, I just want to. I don't think you finished that thought, though. So.
Yep,
you got it.
I don't know. There's questionability in some things about Chinnicky, but he definitely spoke loudly against a lot of criminal activity of Catholics.
He might have been confused on little things. I think he was mostly accurate. Good,
but
and I think he was an honest man. So.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
But yeah. So Abraham Lincoln found out through Professor Morse, Samuel Morse, and from Chinnicky that the Catholics were behind this, and he said very clearly that this war would not be possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits.
And the Jesuits never forget.
We owe it to Popery that our land is now reddened with the blood of her most noblest sons. I remember that quote because I say that quote a lot. So.
Yes. And that is key. The reason I'm mentioning this is because this is not a standalone by itself. Well, that just happened once. Now, let me tie it one more piece before I move on. Loyola, the leadership behind Loyola. Yes, I realize this makes them mad for this to be exposed, but the Loyola Chicago Jesuits are behind this.
That was the founder. The guy that was doing this fire was the founder of Loyola. So, like
Loyola University in Chicago, that one.
It's documented in here. So the link for that is www.restorembi.com/Jesuits.
If you guys type this in the private chat, I can take and drop it in the comment section for everybody.
Sure. Where am I? I'll have to find it. Go ahead.
So yeah, like the Maui situation. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it was definitely the military industrial complex was involved in using some kind of weapon to cause fires there. And I don't know if people are aware, but Hawaii has the largest homeless population of any United States.
No, I did not know that.
And part of that is because they're still opposed to
The forced.
they're opposed. A lot of them are opposed to being forced into Western systems. There are a lot of people around the world that are like this. That the missionaries and the various organizations are trying to force to change their entire lifestyle and register themselves with the state and the governments of their region and stuff.
It's New World Order stuff.
But Hawaii also has probably knowledge of the history of what was going on with the December 7th, 1941 Pearl Harbor attack and some of those kind of things, because they were used as a central base for all sorts of U.S. military operations. So I'm guessing there are possibly people there also that know some of the history of American military criminal activity and stuff.
So point being, this is an active crime. It was never prosecuted. Some criminals are probably still alive, but their descendants are keeping this going because that's what the Jesuits do. We have 28 official Jesuit colleges in the United States because the Vatican still rules and attacks through them. You have to also realize that last I checked is 45 to 60 countries around the world have banned the Jesuits because they're dangerous. Yeah. This is not that's why written proof, it will give you a lot of quotes.
More than 50 countries and city-states have banned the Jesuits since 1960.
Yeah, it's gotten a little more than that, but that's at least a quote, direct quote. So this is an active project, and you don't want to be scared of every Catholic, no. But realize you're welcome for the source. But be aware that many Catholics are spies, and they don't spy in many ways you think they do. We have a number of spies around us, and sometimes it's just to get information, direct eyewitness information, or become buddy so they can sabotage something. It's sometimes the little things that you don't recognize,
or to figure out how to imitate or whatever.
Yes, or imitate. But just be aware that unless you're pulling them from Roman Catholicism to Christ, you can't trust them. They're showing you how much they can trust you by how much you can trust them by how seriously they take the word of God.
Well, as with any organization, there's going to be criminals at the
the top levels.
On the inside that are
the core
that are doing the criminal activity, but they have to disguise it, like you were commenting earlier. They have to disguise it with a religious moral cover. So they figure out how to justify it in a way that the people will believe that it was a good thing that was necessary, or that they weren't actually involved in the bad activity. They were involved in the good activity, all sorts of ways of reinventing how the story goes.
Rewritten history.
So that, rats, I forgot what was I talking about?
Levels of.
Oh yeah, but there's always a whole group of just normal actual people around it that
are not as informed.
That are not involved. That are not involved in those activities at all. And so like with the Masons or the Roman Catholics or whatever, they're sort of religiously involved, or they're because of the philosophy of life, or because it's an opportunity to make money and be around people that are contacts for life and business or money or whatever.
Be aware that the confessional is used to travel secrets, and that's been going on for thousands of years. So that is one way the Catholic cult collects information, and they've done in many wars. That's well documented in many different books. But if I may segue, remember we started on the New World Order weapons? This is why. In Jack Chick's, one of his Crusader magazines, which I wish he had not called Crusader, but he's still very detailed and poignant on Alberto Rivera's information, remember correctly, in noting that they cause sabotage and even using military weapons to cause sabotage and make it look like an act of God, or that's where the pendulum swung the other way this time, or those kind of things. And it's really an attack. If you can catch a real-time attack, you can also pray against it. The reason I mention it is because martial law goes hand in hand with these New World Order weapons, including 5G and scalar weapons, and these DEWs that cause fires have been caught for the last 4 years causing fires. So and they cause earthquakes and other things. So just because you see a natural phenomenon that looks natural doesn't mean that it is natural. So the reason you got to keep up on some of these things is just be aware, at least to entertain the back of your mind. If that's a crime, Father, please bring trouble on it. Because as Jesus said, there'll be wars and rumors of wars, and there'll be earthquakes and volcanoes and fires and various different things in various places, famines, etc. But some of these are orchestrated and they're actually targeted. The Ukraine war is not an actual war. It's a ethnic cleansing against the Jews and Christians in Ukraine. And that's why they're also destroying labs that cover their crimes.
So it's terror against the Jews again.
It's terrorism,
Eastern European
Jews and Christians. The point being, just because you hear an official story doesn't mean you heard much of the story at all. Keep tabs on it, but realize that especially if God prompts you, there's more to it and he wants you to look into it. Look into it. Ask God to show you, because we need enough Christians educated in real time to be praying, because that is what prevents the Holy Spirit is restraining the man of lawlessness until it's his time. In Second Thessalonians 2 explains that there will be a timing when God removes his Holy Spirit, which means also his Christians, the honest followers of Christ, who have a covenant with Christ and the Holy Spirit. They'll be taken out of the way so that the Antichrist can appear, as we see in Revelation 6, but also explained in 1 Thessalonians 4 and 2 Thessalonians 2. Then it'll be his time, as we also see in Daniel 9. There'll be a 7-year tribulation where in the middle of it, God will keep protecting, but some of his restraints will be back because Satan sold his soul to rule the world. He'll get 7 years partially to rule the world, including with the Vatican, who's going to be the woman who rides the beast, uniting all the religions, iron and clay, partnering with the business people to rule the world. And that will last in some aspects for 7 years.
Yeah, I gotta say, I do have a very different take on.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, just to throw that out there, because I don't want any of my newer audience to be like, "Oh, that's what you're pushing, Chris." It's like, well, no, I think the Roman government back in the early hundreds was the ones that were the restrainer, keeping the Vatican from completely arising. And once they went out of the way, then the Vatican government took over, the papacy took over. So it was pagan Rome who was the restrainer. And you can even see some of the Christians praying for Rome because they were scared that once the Roman government went away, this Antichrist would be revealed, and they were thinking that the Antichrist was always going to come within the church, and hence that's where the St. Gregory's comment comes from. The first man who who accepts the title of universal bishop will be the precursor to the Antichrist. So just throw that out there because that thinking's out there too.
Sure. Yes, it is. But be aware, they often give false prophecies that when they're proved false, they prove to be a liar. So you have to counter that. You have to be aware of it. But another note, though,
there's you keep bringing up 7-year tribulation.
Thank you. I was just going to
think we're always under tribulation because
yes.
I mean, you are aware that the Jesuits are the ones who started pushing that 70th week of Daniel into the future, right?
I'll just give you one verse here. So 2 Thessalonians 2:8 says, and then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. So when Christ comes is right after this lawless one has ruled.
What you're about to quote a very popular phrase that I'm aware of, but it wasn't started by the Jesuits. It was actually taught by the early church too. You see references all through Paul's letters. This is the Jesuits having to take over. That's why they have a secret rapture that isn't biblical at all. But the Bible does talk about in Revelation 2 and 3 that Jesus said to the Philadelphian church, "You're weak, you have a little strength, but you are still trying to serve me, and I'll rescue you from the hour trial that comes upon the whole earth." There's like 6 to 10 different passages, and they skip over. They actually mix up, and they do not stay true to the Hebrew Old Testament or the Greek New Testament. And then they pretend that they're the ones who invented it, just like they pretended they invented the church Sunday laws, but they didn't. You can find 3 or 4 references in the Apostle Paul's writings where he makes it very plain that they met on the Lord's Day, which was the first day of the week. And the Apostle John also did that. But then the Apostle Paul, God through the Apostle Paul, clarified in Romans 14 that some meet on one day. Notice he didn't say the Sabbath. So, and it's not even the Greek word. The Greek word Sabbath isn't even there. It's some meet on one day because there's an argument between Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday. I think it was, though it wasn't called Tuesday at the time. And some met every day alike. And his point was, let your conscience be clear in the word of God. My point is that God had already had Paul have that argument long before the Catholic cult pretended they invented it.
Well, I would say we have to have a definite, like, if you want, we maybe should have a separate show
Okay.
sometime where we
Okay.
go into this. I'm cool having a friendly conversation about it, but
Absolutely.
I definitely think the as far as like the Daniel 70th week, I really believe that was done by the Jesuits Bellarmine, Manuel de la Kunz. I'm sure you're aware of this, right? You know who Bellarmine is and Manuel de la Kunz is and all of them. Like, you've heard this argument before, right? Or not, maybe?
I haven't heard those names, but there's a problem with that, and it wasn't a literal 7 years as described by Revelation. There's a little 7 years. Even in 70 AD, when they try to place it there, that doesn't match because that's only 3 years, maybe 3.5. You have to have a full 7 years, according to God, in Revelation 6 through 19, and including 2 Thessalonians 2, Matthew, a couple passages in Matthew,
Well,
where
the
he lays it
Revelation,
out very
that could
clearly.
be 7 years. I don't have a problem with that part of it. With someone saying there's something that happens in Revelation with 7 years. I'm just saying, like, I just notice a lot of people try to throw Daniel's 70th week in the future, and it just doesn't make sense to me in the Jewish context, because it clearly says, and after the 62nd week. Well, we know 7 weeks already happened, 62. So after there's only 1 week left that the Messiah can be crucified in, and to say Messiah has nothing to do with that prophecy is just ridiculous to me. And it says after, so the 69 weeks already happened. So what happened after 69? Messiah gets crucified. There's only 1 week left for him to be crucified, and in the midst of the week, he takes sacrifice and oblations away. I mean, to me, it's a real simple reading, especially when you look at when the decrees went out. I mean, they add up right to the day when Christ gets crucified. So that's why I just don't understand why anyone wants to throw that into the future, because
Now,
if there's only one temple mentioned and all this other stuff, there's no two temples in the whole entire passage, but yet people get a second temple out of it. And I'm like, where is this second temple that's gonna in that passage? I don't see it in the entire chapter. So I just think people really play around with it, and then just to split up sabbatical cycles like that, like, oh, there's a perfect 490, but now you're gonna add more into it when the 490 years already look like a super jubilee to me. And I'm just that's why I just don't care about it. And then you hear all the Jesuits that were behind popularizing it, and then it's like, and it's the perfect scheme to push. Don't have the people look at Rome as being the Antichrist or the papacy as being the Antichrist. Have it be a future Antichrist. So now all the attention's taken off of them. So now no one's no longer looking at Rome. Now they're looking for some future one world Antichrist. And is it this Jew over here? Is it this Greek person over here? Who is it? And to me, it was like the distraction to take away from the a lot of the things that the Protestant Reformation was pointing out that was wrong with the Catholic Church. And it looks like, and then you see all these Jesuit names associated around it, and then you look at how it just perfectly pushes people away from, instead of focusing on Rome, and they're focusing on all these other people, possible Antichrist. And that's just why I just don't like that whole viewpoint.
sure.
I just see a lot of issues with it.
I need to clarify for you and the audience, I do not agree with the Jesuit definitions you've referenced. That's not our beliefs at all. The Bible actually defines each of those things, and they've twisted them, including God references Babylon as being Rome on a number of occasions, because there's twists that they've done. But if you stick with biblical definitions as defined within the Word of God, you see they actually took the same words and they twisted it to make their own doctrine, pretend it was in the Bible, but it wasn't. So there's actually a biblical perspective that stands right alongside it and contradicts it.
Well, I'm cool with Revelation. People want to say, like, like those parts refer to Rome, like in Revelation 13, the second beast.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's fine with me, or the harlot, but
Yes.
like, I just don't like the Daniel 70th week when people do that. I really think that's a goal to take the eyes off of Rome and put it back on someone else. And it also just looks like it fits in with that dispensationalism, where you got your Jews being a special group, and now all of a sudden Now get behind Israel because Israel's got to exist, and it just
Well,
allows.
yes.
I think it just allows Rome to move so many pieces around to manipulate all these narratives.
Well,
Okay.
and that's I know where you're coming from, and I follow that, and I've had many discussions with others in the past, but you and I haven't had that chance yet. But I would distinguish this in that uh, if you just stick with biblical definitions, the more you look through God's word and make sure you have a right translation, because some of them are confused, then you can parse through a number of these satanic tricks. Satan always then makes the most important things the most complicated to take apart and to know truthfully.
Right.
And so as you keep putting pieces together, as I've been trying to do for 20 years on some of these complicated ones, and I agree with you, there's a lot of confusion, dispensationalism. I don't stick with it myself either. But I realize that some people try to paint me that way, not you, just others have in the past. And I do not agree with it. You have to parse it back out. What does Scripture say and what does Scripture not say?
Yeah.
And false definitions being very problematic here. I'm reading as he's scrolling different things. Yeah, there's a number of problems.
There's a specific quote from his book I'm looking for, because Clarence Larkin even admits to everything I said, and he's the one that seems to be like the main guy that all these people who believe like Daniel's 70th week is future and all this dispensational theology. It's like, well, it comes from Clarence Larkin, and Clarence Larkin says exactly what I say, where it's like he describes the three schools of thought. He goes into he starts out with preterism, which he even says the Jesuits created. Full preterism I'm talking about.
Yes.
He says the Jesuits created it because they wanted to think, oh no, the Antichrist, that's not going to happen. That's all in the past. And then he says, then there's historicism, which teaches that that the Pope was the Antichrist, and that was the secret weapon of the martyrs to that gave them courage to endure the things they endured during the Protestant Reformation and before that, because
Jesus answered that in Revelation 2.
Right.
So he's completely wrong on that one.
And then he even admits that the futurism was developed by like people like Francisco Ribera, Bellarmine, and stuff like that. And he goes, and this is the school of interpretation I hold to. And so he's naming the Jesuits, and he says, this is the school of interpretation I hold to. So, I mean, like he even admits it in his book. So what I'm saying is it's not like I'm saying like the craziest thing. This is even coming from one of the top dispensational writers out there that everyone looks to.
I agree. And Spurgeon is a Jesuit, so he's an enemy as well. He has some interesting quotes. That's a different subject.
He's not looking at that.
Okay. I don't know much about Spurgeon, so I won't comment on that.
No worries. No, but if I may add, of interest, Jesuits lie in multiple ways. They don't even sometimes when they're saying they're telling the truth, they're also telling a lie. So you have to realize that's where I've had to take apart a number of the Catholic lies, because even when they say we started this, then you have to take it back apart, because if you look deeper, you find out they actually boasted something they didn't even start. They robbed it from somebody, or they tried to claim credit for something they didn't even do. So you have to really double check everything they say, even when they boasted we created this. It's a deeper level of the onion. But if you don't mind, we'll leave that for future discussions. And thank you very much for showing that and for the discussion on it.
Let him find what he's looking for.
Yes. While you're looking that up, I wanted to.
Oh yeah, if there's anything you want to go on or talk about, whatever,
let's
man.
cover one more thing, because this is useful. Because there are famous Jesuits that some people have probably heard of but didn't realize that need to be discussed, like Fidel Castro, who is actually playing. There was a strange game of war playing with that one. You also have John Boehner. He was trained by Jesuit colleges. You have, oh, come on, brain. I'm looking for them. I had them earlier. Where's my list? Okay, I'm in the wrong list. There we are. Here's the list I was looking for. Joseph Goebbels, trained at Jesuit college. Stalin, Castro, Clinton, George Tenet, CIA director. Oh, you found good. Okay, you found. Yeah,
I
can you
didn't find it. I thought he might have had it, man, because it was kind of listed just like this,
Oh,
but I never could find it. So you just go ahead with whatever you're talking
go
about,
ahead.
man.
If you can find the link, go ahead and share it, and we'll let's plan to come back to this because it'd be good to.
Yeah,
to
we'll just do a whole show on this because if we don't,
Go.
if we get into it now, we're gonna really get
Yeah,
like
it'd be long.
actually this like because I need to wrap this show up soon anyway.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
in this topic, we
Yeah.
we need a couple hours to talk about it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was just going to cover some Jesuits and a couple of final thoughts. John Kerry, Robert Gates, John Gannon, I can't remember who, Prescott Bush. He was trained by the Jesuits at Stonehurst College. Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes. There's quite a few others, but if you look them up, you'll find there's a lot of influential Jesuits in key positions, and they sometimes even look like they're figureheads. They're not actually doing something. But like we point out with the Chicago fire, if you see them active on something, check it out. If it looks dangerous or problematic or related to something else that is, investigate it, and you might find something. And of course, you have to let the Holy Spirit lead you on what you have time for and what He wants you to investigate. So of course there'll be much more discussed, and we plan to talk again soon. But God's cures and God's creation are key for the various things. In Florida, they're threatening us with both fires because they're drying us out with the chemtrails, and also starting fires, and also hurricanes, which you remember since Katrina they've been playing with, including putting steam generators and things to enhance. It's a weather weapon. Owning the weather by 2025 military document. So it is a weapon they use. And so if you see some weather that doesn't make sense, or you see a cyber attack happening on you, pray. Ask God to protect you, give you wisdom in it, and pray for other Christians, because there are different levels of leaders and different levels of frontline people. Some people are more on frontline than us, and they get attacked more. And many times they can't even figure out what it is. But if you're having trouble with something, just pray. You'll be amazed, as I'm sure you already know, and some of our audience knows, that God will give you wisdom on the spot for all kinds of solutions, oftentimes very simple ones, to whatever you're going through.
I'm just I just want to have this for later because we mentioned something earlier, and I just want to come back around to it because I don't know. Are you familiar with Jared Israel at all?
Not at all. Sorry.
Okay, so there's like this Yugoslavian Holocaust or the Bosnian Holocaust. Man,
Yeah.
it never pops up. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Let me type Bosnia. Maybe this guy is banned so much. He has this website called The Emperor's New Clothes. Here we go. It's this one video. This is him right here. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not. But this Holocaust, I don't know if people remember this Time Life magazine. If they even have it, they might have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where it's got these guys, right?
Yes.
You remember that on the front of and on the front of the magazine, and I remember seeing this back in 1992, I think, and it says, "How much longer must this go on?"
Yes, and the cameraman walked into the barbed wire to take a picture out at the crowd.
Yeah, because the thing is, these guys, they're not even well, I don't know what happened to my screen there, but these guys are not really behind the barbed wire. It's actually the camera crew that's behind the barbed wire, and it shows it later on here. And I just want to bring this up because this is one of the things that woke me up the most. I don't know why it's doing this to me now, but this is one of the things that woke me up the most was when I saw this video, because up until this time, whenever the Republicans and Democrats voted to go on a war, I thought, oh, okay, because they don't like each other. If they're both agree to go to war on this one issue, then this must be a legit war. This must be a legit thing going on.
Yeah.
And so I was like starting to look into some things that were going on in Kosovo, and I ran across this guy, Jared Israel, because things that were going on in Kosovo didn't look right to me either. And he had just released this video. I think this was in 2001 that he released this. And it's sad that he's only had like 10,000 views on this video.
Uh-huh.
But when you're watching it, I'm like, whoa, those people, wait a minute, the other people were behind, the camera crews behind the barbed wire fence, because they're the ones in this chicken coop. So when they're filming outside of it for all these people walking around freely, I'm like, wait a minute, those people are walking around freely. I thought they were in a cage, a barbed wire
Yes.
cage. I thought this guy was being started, but I'm looking at everyone else, and they're all kind of like they got a little meat on their bones, and I'm like, okay. Like, wait a minute, these guys aren't starving. Like, there's only like this one guy, and then in the video, that one guy that's wearing the suspenders, which I don't know why YouTube's doing this now, Timmy.
There it goes.
But yeah, you can kind of see it. But this guy right up in front, he's like, oh no, because the woman goes, what's wrong with him? He's like, oh well, some of us are how you say, skinny, some of us are like this, and you can see the other guys look healthy. He's the only one.
Yeah.
But when they did that picture, what did they do? You only saw him behind the barbed wire fence, and he looks emancipated. And and it just shows you the media manipulation. You know, our own media had to know that. Our own CIA had to know that. But yet they got this blasting all over Fox News and all over your little media outlets at the time. And at the time, you didn't have YouTube and you didn't have the internet. It was just like you had maybe, cable TV, but you still basically had the same 4 news channels. You didn't have too many other ones, and they're just blasting this all over the place. And it's like, oh yeah, we need to go to war. And then I think Clinton gets a call. Was it Clinton I think it was Clinton at the time, gets a call from the Pope to go bomb it or something.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I'm just like, but that video just opened up my eyes, because I'm like, wait a minute. So if you're thinking critically, you're thinking both sides. There's no way these like senators and congressmen didn't know. So both sides must be in on this together. And then that's when I started looking even deeper. I was like, wait a minute. What's the one thing controlling them? And then you start to find all these Vatican ties to everything. And so that's what really woke me up. And I just kind of wanted to share that in case you were never aware of that or never ran across that.
I have seen the Time magazine picture. I heard the story behind it, but I was not familiar with this documentary. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop the link. This is only part 1, and they used to have 3 parts. It used to be on another channel. And he had another channel called Emperor's Clothes, and that channel got removed by YouTube. But he didn't post very much. It was just this. So I don't think they want this video seen or known.
Apparently not. No.
But
great note. Thank you.
Yeah, I posted that in the private chat too, if that makes it easier to copy that link for you to watch later. But
cool.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to throw that out there because we did go over the Orthodox earlier and everything. So,
and hopefully in the future we can talk about the trades, the East India Company and stuff like that. We have more things to talk about.
Oh yeah. One other thing. This is a little off subject, but kind of not. Oops, not this one.
That one looked interesting too.
A friend sent me this, and I just kind of want to, just because I feel like there's a lot of controlled opposition, and I actually think, yes, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is controlled opposition when you promote Trump's injection at your church on the Sabbath, and you even host a vaccine conference at your church on the Sabbath. And you should know Trump's Jesuit Fordham, everyone behind this, Bill Gates, his wife, as a was influenced by Jesuits, talks about her Catholic upbringing. We know the Pope promotes this. So why are you promoting this at your church? Shouldn't you, if you got the health experts, be aware that your health experts supposedly, you're not like a normal church. You have like a multi-billion-dollar health industry on top of it with a health network. So you got your own people, and you're supposed to be against the Jesuits, and you would think red flags would come up. You would think that if any church in the whole entire world, if they were really legit, the Adventist church would speak out against this, not tell people, hey, you're not gonna get to go to our schools if you don't get it. Right.
Yeah.
So someone found this random comment, and it was off of like, I guess it was an old Glenn Beck video. And someone ran across this comment and they screenshotted it. Now it says 1 hour ago, but this is actually older than that, because they've said they were going through their cell phone and they said, hey, Chris, I saw you did this show and I remember this.
Nice.
And so what this comment says is, this guy Greg leaves and he says, my wife's college had a huge section of their graduation ceremony dedicated to the Juneteenth agenda. It's a private Seventh-day Adventist college that tried to deny my wife the ability to finish her education because she will not be vaccinated. How's that for diversity, equity, and inclusion? But
absolutely, a partial diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to. I know that's kind of way off topic a little bit, but we're getting towards the close, and I want to throw out a couple, things that flashed across my desk, so
great, good conversations. We
I know you guys are from Florida too, so that's I think that's
we know that one.
Interested, yeah,
they're the weed near us, and they are quite big and quite dangerous. But we like all these conversations. It's really good. We can find gracious, thoughtful people who can bring up these subjects, and we can all discuss them, because you have to have a community conversation where you bring it on the table and you just graciously discuss, even when you see it slightly differently. That's fine. If you can put all the pieces on the table, then you can work together to solve it.
Yeah, there's something. Oh my gosh, I knew he was going to win. I predicted this maybe back in, oh gosh, this was years ago. I said the whole reason why they made this guy senator was because a senator of my state was because I knew he was going to be governor. I have a this is, I have a recorded call where I was calling him up during 2020, and I said, Mike, you need to go. A couple of times I called him up, and all I got was his answering machine, but I still recorded the whole thing because I wanted people to know I'm leaving these messages. And one of them was, I got mad when he was backing the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, because it was like, do we have to nominate another Roman Catholic that's just going to go along with this agenda?
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, there's this art. As soon as I call him, I think it was either that very day, maybe 4 hours later, another person from my state, Jim Banks, he approaches Donald Trump, and they did this. There was an article about it, and it's like, Jim Banks asked Trump to look into anti-Catholic bigotry or something like that.
Oh wow!
From my own state, who happens to know Mike Braun, goes, and it just happens to be that day when I complain about this, and I got it recorded. I have the newspaper. Like, I don't want to get it now. It's one of those things I wanted to show you, but we don't have time. But the next show, I want to kind of bring that up, because I think that's really interesting. Now this guy's looks like he's going to be our next governor, and it's kind of angry.
That is kind of it's very important whenever we're talking about crimes to be very delicate and careful about who we're pointing fingers at and why, and then just your and then just trying to make sure that we're also aware that they're of course looking for something to get us for it, if we make mistakes about what we're talking about, who's the problem and why the problem.
And can I mention that they're really good at acting? You can't tell who you're looking at.
Yeah.
They can say all kinds of really good things, and you don't know.
They're
you just don't know.
Experts in law a lot of times, so they know.
Oh, yeah.
They're brilliant at words.
Another thing I need to show you too, man, is this stuff I got on Ron Paul.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oops, I meant to bring you up.
Yeah, no big deal. I was trying to.
Where are
you at? Almost.
Here, I guess I do it that way. There we go.
There we are. There. Useful for history on the origins of the so-called Palestinian issue. They never were Palestinians. They never will be Palestinians. They're just used by the Roman Catholic cult to create a problem. And this actually documents even Arab leaders explaining that even the Arab leaders are saying that there never has been a Palestinian state. So it's some interesting discussion in future. Go ahead. I interrupted your thought though.
Oh no, man, no. This is the end of the show. This is just like throw out random facts for the next show and wrap it up, because I just said I just would like to cover, if we do another show on this topic. I don't know if next time you just want to we just get really deep into the Bible. If you just want to have a show like that where we just discuss prophecy and things. I know a lot of the people who watch my show, they enjoy hearing like discussion, debate. So it's no big deal to that we have maybe two differing views on this and we talk about, because I think my audience would like it, and
great.
and I think we might actually get someplace in it. Whereas some of these seem like they're a stalemate. I think this one might actually go somewhere. But if we do another show just where we're talking about like politics and news information and relating that to people, I would like to sometime go into Ron Paul with y'all, because I do think I have unique information about him, and I really think he's controlled opposition. And
yes, he is. We saw him in person here. We'll talk about it.
Well, whenever he's like, there's just nothing we can do.
And the Fed, audit the Fed. It's fixed.
Yeah, it's okay. When he ran, this is why I'm so mad at him, because I was thinking he's controlled opposition. Then I had a friend talk me into helping the campaign, right?
Yeah.
And when I do something, I do it full force. And I mean, I was working 80 hours a week, and then and I was going without sleep trying to help promote this campaign. And then I started noticing, little tactics. I'm like, wait a minute, you're sabotaging yourself by doing this. You're sabotaging yourself by doing this. Oh, there's this important primary going on, but yet you pick this week to go the whole week without telling people about the primary, because Ron Paul went like this one whole week where he would do like these shows almost daily, but then here's a really important primary about and he doesn't do any shows. Right. I'm just like, this is really weird. This is bad. Then later on in August, one of his campaign managers come out and someone interviews him, and it's Doug Weed. That's who it is. And I was already hearing all kinds of other stuff, man, going on with Ron Paul. And then it's like, then Doug Weed, he gets interviewed, and he's like, well, going into the Michigan primary again with Mitt Romney, we get this call where Ron Paul got threat, where he got a threat, and so we decided not to attack Mitt Romney. And I'm like, no, that made me mad, because I was like, because when people said, well, he was threatened, it's like, well, because he said something about, well, we got some information on you, Ron Paul, and if you if you attack Mitt Romney, it'll get released, something like that. And it's like, well, I thought Ron Paul was this like real clean, great American guy, and you're getting scared about some info that Mitt Romney has on you. I doubt it. And even if it is true, then it just means Ron Paul's corrupt anyway.
Yes.
But but the thing that really got me mad was, I was like, wait a minute, Michigan primary. That was in February. You mean we've been wasting our time since mid-February promoting you, and you already decided to quit? Because to me, if you're not going to attack Mitt Romney, you quit. Because I said Mitt Romney was going to be the guy that was going to be the candidate back in 2008, and here it is, the 2012, primary, and you're deciding not to attack him. And I'm like, and I think everyone should have known in the Republican Party that Romney was the front runner back in 2008. So I'm like, how did you not know this if you're so smart, Ron Paul? And so, and you picked not to attack him. It's like, that means you quit, and you didn't let none of us know it. And we're busting our, we're putting out all this energy. And then it started making more sense to me, because I started hearing other people complain about other things. And I'm like, okay, Ron Paul's mismanaging his website. he's mainly just giving money to his families. I'm hearing all these rumors, it's because there's people complaining about on the inside how he's just paying family members and friends and they're incompetent, and it's like all this other stuff. And my wife, we tried to reach out to him because we're like, wow, your website's messed up. My wife knows all about running a website, and she could fix this for you. And I'm like, and here you are running a campaign and you got a broke website. It just didn't make sense to me. And now I'm like, oh, now this all makes sense. Now I understand. You didn't care. You didn't even care. I don't think he cared personally.
No, we agree. We agree on that one for sure.
And I just got that clip of his campaign manager, but I like next time we do a show like this, I'd like to just show some of that stuff too, and so get your opinion on it. But
great, sounds good.
But anyway, is there anything you want to add? Got about 5 more minutes. You guys want to throw anything else out there?
I think that was a great discussion, and you got to bring some history back to current. This topic. Oh, let me cover. Yes, this is a factoid that's kind of fun. So if the 1871 Chicago fire was no big deal, then why do they care to call their fire department the Chicago Fire? Why do they have a running TV show right now called the Chicago Fire, having something completely different?
Soccer team is the Chicago Fire.
And then because they couldn't quite hide the 1871 Chicago Fire, they decided to burn down a Lady of the Lakes. That's not quite it. Our Lady 1958. They decided to burn down one of their Catholic places to cover crimes, I'm sure. And nobody knows how the fire started.
They have removed they built the headquarters for training for firefighting on the site of where the fire started, that Jesuit family's house. They built it there.
That's a coincidence.
Well, now they've rebuilt a new complex somewhere else, hoping that will and remove that, so hoping that will just go away and be forgotten.
Wow. Yeah, that's some really interesting stuff, man.
And it's real time. This is still a real crime, just like World War II. World War II, they have to keep writing movies about it. Why? Because there's still things that need to be discussed there.
Yep.
I'm just gonna bring up this book for people, Operation Gladio, Paul L. Williams.
Yeah, I was interested in that.
Okay, so
yeah, this guy, he's a I don't know if he's still a Catholic or not, but he's a Catholic that was a FBI consultant. And so his book is well written, well documented. And he's just going over all these operations from the that's overseas, the drugs, just like everything, man. It's like in tying it all to like the CIA and through this Operation Gladio and how it's working with the Catholic Church and how the Catholic Church is basically running Operation Gladio.
Right.
And so it's pretty well exposed, and I just kind of bring that up because it does kind of tie into like a little bit into what you were talking about earlier, and just like
absolutely
global control of everything. And
we're glad reports are out that even if it's somewhat dishonest, when they're having to get out facts, then they're having to be somewhat real because they have got to convince their audience. And there's some facts that come out that can be investigated. Oh yes, someone used to be supporting Ron Paul.
Same year I did, and that's the only time I did too, because like I had this friend he'd play all these Ron Paul clips and make them look real cool. I'm like, well, and at the time, I mean, I was like, the only people I heard speak against Ron Paul was people like, Eric Phelps. So my mind was like, okay, my friend's playing these clips that make Ron Paul seem kind of legit, because Ron Paul's, looks like he's saying some of the right things.
Yes.
I'm hearing people like Eric Phelps talk against. I'm like, so at the time, my mind's thinking, well, maybe since I think Eric Phelps is controlled opposition, maybe that's another layer of it, is that when someone is legit running, they talk against them to even further break their support, you know. So that, and then and plus I was working so much I couldn't do really good research at the time.
Sure, of course.
And it's just like as I'm watching this campaign unfold, I'm like, dude, there's a lot wrong going on here. There's a lot wrong. And then all of a sudden, you know, Doug Weed at the end there and 2012 in August released, and I see that interview. I'm like, boom, it all makes sense. Everything I was seeing, man, makes so much sense. Like, why wasn't he fighting? Why wasn't he doing anything? Why wasn't he campaigning more aggressively? Because the guy never cared. He never cared to win.
No. Now, what's interesting about this is the ones you can catch gives you a puzzle piece or a template to then identify others. And it's very often that kind of case where you got two opposite sides, and when you can figure out they're both controlled opposition, then you can go, okay, and you can notice others who are playing the same game. Funny thing is, we've caught many different people who like to, when it's two opposite sides, like for instance, there's some in creationism versus evolution, who actually are using their platform to boost the other person, and then vice versa, because they're actually building each up. They're both building up their own money sources and not trying to tear down anything at all. They're not getting to the core truth. They're actually making money and helping the other make money. It's a fake debate.
That's a good point too. Well, I'm gonna stop saying anything else interesting or anything. So if you got anything else to say, I'm just gonna end the show.
Great talking, Chris. Look forward to next time.
Hey, good talking to you, Steve. And Paul. I'm glad you brought Paul along, man. You had great information too. It was a good surprise, man. So, you know, thank you for that. And I completely don't mind that if you ever decide to surprise me with a guest.
No problem.
Like, I don't mind, man.
Cool.
So anyway, man, yeah, I appreciate everything. I appreciate both of your time, and thanks for coming on my show, man.
Thanks for having us.
All right, man. Thanks. All right, everyone. Later.
See ya.